This story is about friendship, promises, and the journeys we take to keep them. Two childhood friends make a vow to travel the world together, but life pulls them in different directions. Years later, one friend finally fulfills the promise, and their reunion becomes a heartfelt journey of forgiveness, rediscovery, and second chances. Listen and let this touching story also help you improve your English. When I was 10, I made a promise with my best friend, Daniel. We were sitting on the old swings in the park near my house. The chains creaked, and the metal seats were cold, but we didn't care. Children never care about small things like that. Let's travel the world when we grow up, Daniel said, pushing himself higher. Not just one country, but everywhere. Paris, Tokyo, New York, all of it. I laughed so hard I almost fell off my swing. Everywhere. That's crazy. But his eyes were serious, even if his hair was sticking out like a bird's nest. Promise me. We'll save money, and when we're adults, we'll go. Just you and me. So I promised. We both shook hands, sticky hands, because we had been eating ice cream just minutes before. At that moment, it felt like the most important deal in the universe. Of course, we were just kids. What did we know? But that promise stayed with me. Years passed, as years always do. Daniel and I went to the same high school, but after that, life started to move us in different directions. He went to university in another city. I stayed here, working small jobs while studying part-time. Still, I didn't forget our promise. Whenever I had a little extra money, I put it into a small box under my bed. On the lid, I wrote one word in big red letters: travel. It made me smile every time I opened it. Daniel, on the other hand, seemed busy with other things. New friends, new studies, new girlfriends. When we met during holidays, I sometimes brought up our plan. He always laughed and said, "Oh yes, the world trip. Of course, one day." Then he would change the topic. I told myself he was just waiting for the right time. But in my heart, I started to wonder, did he even remember the promise the way I did? When I turned 23, I finally had enough money for one small trip. It was not Paris, Tokyo, or New York. It was just Rome. But for me, it felt like stepping into a dream. I wrote Daniel a long message. "I'm going. First stop of our world trip." I waited for his reply, hoping he would say, "Wait for me, I'll join." Instead, he just sent, "That's cool. Send photos." So I went alone. And Rome was everything. Loud streets, strong coffee, people talking with their hands. I stood in front of the Colosseum and whispered, "We did it, Daniel," even though I was standing there by myself. From then on, I made it my mission. Every year, I worked, saved, and traveled. Sometimes to big cities, sometimes to small towns no one had heard of. Each time, I sent Daniel photos. Each time, his answers grew shorter. But still, I believed, one day, he would join me. My friends said I was crazy. "Why don't you buy a car?" they asked. "Why don't you save for a house?" But I didn't care. Every coin I saved had only one purpose. I wanted to keep the promise. Even if Daniel wasn't with me, I carried his name in my travels. In Paris, I climbed the Eiffel Tower and carved our initials on a little notebook I always carried. In Tokyo, I ate sushi that looked too pretty to eat and wrote, "Daniel should taste this." In New York, I stood in Times Square and imagined him next to me, laughing at the giant screens. Each trip was like a letter to him, though he never read it. He was busy with work, then marriage, then children. His life became full. Mine became wide. Sometimes, when I returned home, I felt lonely. But then I looked at my box of tickets and photos, and I thought, a promise is still a promise. The older we grew, the less we spoke. When we did, our talks sounded like two radio stations on different channels. Daniel spoke about promotions, meetings, diapers, and traffic. I spoke about mountains in Peru, trains in India, or a night bus in Morocco where a chicken sat next to me. He laughed at that last one. You and your chickens, he said. I can't even leave my office for lunch, and you're sitting with birds on buses. We joked, but I felt the distance. His world was fixed in one place, while mine kept moving. Sometimes I envied his stability, sometimes he envied my freedom. But neither of us said it out loud. One night, after a call with him, I stared at my travel map on the wall. So many pins. So many places. And only one thought in my mind: he was supposed to be here too. By the time I was 30, I had seen more of the world than I had ever dreamed. My photo albums were full, my passport was heavy with stamps, and my stories could fill books. But still, every time I landed in a new city, I whispered his name. Here we are, Daniel. It became a little ritual, half a prayer, half a joke. Once, in Istanbul, a street seller heard me and asked, "Who is Daniel?" "Your travel buddy." I laughed so hard that tea almost came out of my nose. "No," I said. "Just a very late travel partner." People came and went in my life. Some wanted to travel with me, some even became close friends. But deep inside, I always felt tied to that childhood promise. It wasn't just about travel anymore. It was about loyalty. About keeping something alive, even if the other person forgot. And I wondered, did Daniel really forget, or did he just choose not to remember? It was an ordinary Tuesday when the message came. A short one, from an old mutual friend. "Did you hear? Daniel is divorced. Moved back to our hometown." I read it twice, 3 times. Daniel, divorced? The boy who once told me he would build a perfect life, brick by brick? That night, I couldn't sleep. I thought about him sitting in his office, day after day, choosing meetings over dreams. And now, after all that, he was back where we started, probably broken, probably lost. I wanted to call him. But what would I say? "Sorry your marriage failed. Want to see my photo of Machu Picchu?" That didn't sound right. So I stayed quiet. Still, something inside me began to stir. Maybe, after all these years, the time for our promise had finally come. We met in the same park where the promise was born. The swings were still there, though older, rustier, and a little too small for adults. Daniel was waiting on the bench, looking thinner, with more gray in his hair than I expected. When he saw me, he smiled, but it was a tired smile. "You haven't changed much," he said. I laughed. "That's a lie. Look at these wrinkles. I earned them in 3 different time zones." For a moment, it felt almost normal, like no years had passed. But then silence sat between us, heavy and strange. "Finally," I said, "I kept the promise." Daniel looked at me with confusion. "What promise?" My heart dropped. The world seemed to pause. How could he not remember? "The promise," I repeated. "To travel the world together. Remember? Paris, Tokyo, New York, ice cream hands on the swings." Daniel blinked, then rubbed his forehead. "Oh, that. Wow. I barely remember. We were just kids. Just kids." The words cut deep. For me, that promise had been the thread of my whole life. For him, it was nothing more than a faded childhood drawing. I tried to laugh it off. "Well, I guess I overdid it then. I carried you to 15 countries without your luggage fee." He chuckled politely, but his eyes stayed sad. "I'm sorry. Life, it just happened. I forgot." I nodded, but inside, something cracked. All those years, all those journeys, I had been talking to a ghost of a promise. And yet, looking at him now, broken and tired, I wasn't angry. I just felt tired too. "Do you know why I kept it?" I asked. My voice shook more than I wanted. Daniel stayed quiet. So I went on. "Because it was the only thing that never left me. Jobs came and went. People came and went. But the promise stayed. It gave me something to hold onto." His eyes softened. For the first time that day, he really looked at me. And I left you holding it alone. I laughed through a lump in my throat. Yeah. Do you know how many times I had to explain to strangers why I was whispering your name in front of some famous building? That made him smile. A real one this time. You're crazy. Maybe, I said. But maybe I'm also free. And you're the one who's been in a cage. The silence after that was heavy, but not empty. It felt like we were finally telling the truth. Daniel took a deep breath, looking at the old swings, then at me. You know, I think I finally understand. All those trips, all those postcards, all the chicken stories. You were living the promise for both of us. I shrugged. Someone had to. And you were living your life. That's fine too. No, he said, shaking his head. It's not fine. I should have remembered. I should have been there. And now, I feel like I've missed everything. I could see the weight in his eyes, the regret, the loneliness. And suddenly, I realized something. I didn't just carry a promise for him. I carried it for me too. For my dreams, my freedom, my courage. Maybe it's not too late, I said quietly. We can still start small. One city at a time. You and me. He blinked, as if the idea had never been possible before. Then, slowly, he nodded. We didn't start with Paris or Tokyo. That would be too much. Instead, we went to a small town near the sea. Just 2 days. Just two old friends trying to find their way back to each other. Daniel complained about the early train. Why are the seats so hard? Why is the coffee so small? I laughed. Welcome to travel, my friend. You'll get used to it, or not. That's part of the fun. At night, we walked along the beach, shoes in hand, sand cold under our feet. For the first time in years, I felt the old bond, the childish excitement, the quiet laughter that made all the lonely years worth it. He looked at me, eyes soft. I think I missed all this more than I realized. I smiled. Better late than never. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone in keeping the promise. After the beach trip, we planned another small journey, this time to a city neither of us had visited before. We argued over maps, laughed at wrong turns, and shared street food that was too spicy for Daniel's taste. Each moment felt new, yet familiar. I realized I had imagined him in all my travels, but now he was actually here, fumbling with tickets, asking silly questions, and sometimes tripping over his own feet. I laughed more in those days than I had in years. At night, we shared a tiny hotel room. He snored loudly, but I didn't mind. Somehow, it was comforting. It felt like life had looped back, and the promise we made on a rusty swing had finally found its way to reality. I thought about the years we lost and smiled anyway. Some things are worth waiting for, even if the wait is long and a little lonely. Months passed, and our small trips became bigger. We didn't need Paris or New York yet. Just being together, seeing new places, learning new foods, laughing at wrong turns, that was enough. One evening, sitting on a quiet hill watching the sunset, Daniel turned to me. You know, I forgot the promise. But maybe I needed to forget, so you could teach me how to keep it. I laughed softly, heart full. You're terrible at keeping promises. He grinned. And you're amazing at it. Sometimes life lets you start late. Sometimes life lets you make mistakes. But sometimes, if you're lucky, it also gives you a second chance. We had our second chance. And this time, we would not let it go. Now, years later, I often think about that day on the swings. 10-year-old Daniel and 10-year-old me, making a wild promise we didn't fully understand. I smile, because even though he forgot, the promise shaped my life. I saw the world, met amazing people, and learned to be brave and patient. I learned that keeping a promise isn't always about the other person, it's about what it teaches you about yourself. And then there's the best part, we finally kept it together. Not perfectly. Not on time. But together. Life is messy, funny, and sometimes sad. But if you hold on to the things that matter, Even when others forget, you might just find your way back. I look at Daniel now, laughing at something silly on our latest trip, and I think, some promises are worth a lifetime.